American Jobs Plan. President Joe Biden pushes his spending proposal, while Republicans say it hides a far-left agenda. Officer on trial. What police are saying about the moments leading to George Floyd's death. Under the microscope. A look at China's record on religious persecution and the future of the Beijing Olympics. And report from Rome on the Vatican's efforts to bring the vaccine to the disadvantaged. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, April 7th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Joe Biden pushes his multi-trillion-dollar American Jobs Plan. He says it will help to rebuild the infrastructure and more, but opponents are ripping the proposal, saying it will raise taxes and spend way too much money. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening. President Biden's $2.3 trillion American Jobs Plan comes just after most Americans got $1,400 under the American Rescue Plan. And today in a speech, President Biden warned that China is racing ahead of the U.S.
Inaction simply is not an option.
President Joe Biden again selling his American Jobs Plan.
We are America. We don't just fix for today. We build for tomorrow.
Along with fixing roads and bridges and expanding broadband access, the American Jobs Plan price tag, according to the White House, includes $213 billion to produce, preserve, and retrofit more than 2 million affordable and sustainable places to live, and $35 billion in the full range of solutions needed to achieve technology breakthroughs that address the climate crisis. The GOP has ripped into the proposal, slamming it as a jobs killer and tax hiker, tweeting Biden's, quote, infrastructure plan doesn't prioritize American people, it prioritizes a far-left agenda. The White House claims corporations would foot the jobs bill through higher taxes, that, and an expanded global minimum tax.
It's a historic investment in America.
Earlier, Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo pitched her boss's plan. She says it's about creating well-paying jobs and outcompeting China.
Many have commented that it's large, it's bold, it's necessarily large, because frankly, we're behind.
Meanwhile, First Lady Jill Biden speaks out about the importance of helping military families. The White House initiative called Joining Forces is focused on jobs, education, and health.
How can we hope to keep our military strong if we don't give our family survivors and caregivers what they need to survive? If we don't act on our sacred obligation?
Now back to the American Jobs Plan. The president also said he is open to negotiating that proposed 28% tax rate, even if it means going lower, but emphasized his plan has to be paid for. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
A former Vice President Mike Pence is launching a new advocacy group called Advancing American Freedom. The former VP says conservatives will not yield to the radical left and the new administration. In a statement, he calls their policies destructive to America's greatness. Several high-profile conservatives are named as board members. Members of law enforcement testify on police policies and procedures in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin as the jury considers the former officer's actions during the arrest of George Floyd.
Raise your right hand.
One after another, veteran members of law enforcement taking the stand in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin, testifying on police training and procedure.
Is this a use of force?
Yes, sir.
The prosecution attempting to cut to the heart of the defense's argument that then Minneapolis police officer Chauvin was following his training when he knelt on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes.
We don't train leg neck restraints with the officers in service. And as far as my knowledge, we never have.
On Tuesday, the use of force instructor who trained Chauvin in 2018 testifying officers are trained to only use force that is proportional to the threat.
We want to use the lowest level of force possible.
Witnesses also said officers are required to de-escalate situations.
We have the time to slow things down and reevaluate, reassess.
And render aid.
If you don't have a pulse on a person, you'll immediately start CPR.
But in cross-examination, the defense maintaining Chauvin's actions were appropriate.
Does this appear to be a neck restraint?
No, sir.
And argued use of force depends on the situation. Chauvin has pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter stemming from George Floyd's death. A new report says Christians in China are being held in secretive brainwashing camps. The report in Radio Free Asia says communist officials are targeting Christians and are trying to force them to renounce their faith. China is home to an estimated roughly 9 million Catholics and 68 million Protestants. Joining us now is Gordon Chang, author of both The Coming Collapse of China and The Great U.S.-China Tech War. Gordon, welcome back. Always great to have you on. What more do we know about this report?
Well, this report mirrors things that we have heard throughout China. What China's been doing is setting up these secret detention facilities, which appear to be temporary. But these temporary facilities actually can be long-term. So, for instance, one person was held in one of these facilities for almost 10 months. And that's a real indication that these facilities are basically permanent. Now, we also got to remember, Tracy, that China started building these mass detention camps for the Uyghurs around 2017. But before they did that, their repression of the Uyghurs very much is similar to what we're seeing with these temporary detention facilities for Christians. And so the question is whether China will go to a bigger sort of facility for Christians. I'm not saying that they will, but there is a pattern here, and we've got to be very concerned.
You know, one of the things I want to talk about right now is the Olympics in Beijing. A State Department representative in the U.S. alluded to a possible boycott of the Beijing Olympics next year. Can you give us an update on that? And if that were to happen, how do you think China would respond?
Well, there's more and more talk that there will be some sort of action from the administration. And this contrasts with what the administration was saying in its first weeks in office, where it said that there was no talk of a boycott, no talk of any sort of action with regard to the Winter Olympics next year. I think something has to happen because it's clear that China is committing acts of genocide as defined in the 1948 Genocide Convention. And that convention requires signatories, which include the United States, to prevent and punish acts of genocide. So something's going to have to occur. I don't know exactly what form it will be, but I think the American people are going to demand that the administration do something about the Olympics.
Another thing that's really on top of mind, too, right now, the U.S. military is warning that China seems to be accelerating its timetable for capturing control of Taiwan and stepping up a show of force in that region. Can you talk about that and the activity that's taking place now?
We are seeing almost daily incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone by large formations of Chinese planes, both nuclear-capable H-6K bombers and others. Also, right at this moment, China's Liaoning, which is its first aircraft carrier, with its support groups, is very close to Taiwan. And so there is increasing military pressure. This has been occurring now for about 4 months. And, you know, at some point, Beijing is going to have to do something because it's creating a marker for itself with the Chinese people.
Gordon, how would you like the Biden administration to respond? What would you like to see?
I think the Biden administration has to do something it doesn't want to do, and that is to say to the Chinese, both in private and in public, that the United States will defend Taiwan. If we make that clear, I think China will be deterred. We didn't say that in 1950 when North Korea was threatening to invade South Korea, and we know what happened there. We also didn't say that in 1990 when Saddam Hussein was threatening to invade Kuwait. Our ambassador, April Glaspie, basically told Saddam, look, the United States isn't going to do anything. So those are two wars that could have been prevented by clear declarations of American intent. We need to do the same thing because now, if there is a conflict, it would be so much more destructive than in 1950 or 1990.
Well, unfortunately, we have to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Gordon. Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tracy.
AstraZeneca's coronavirus vaccine is prudently safe. That is according to the European Medicines Agency.
The benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine in preventing COVID-19 overall outweigh the risks of side effects.
The European Union drug regulator says that it found a possible link between the AstraZeneca vaccine and a rare clotting disorder. It declined Wednesday to impose any new age restrictions on the vaccine. Meantime, Dr. Anthony Fauci tells CNN that the U.S. does not need the AstraZeneca vaccine, having 3 already approved here in the U.S. Other countries like Britain rely upon it and plan to continue its use with some new limits. Belgium has joined those who have paused administering it. The Vatican is working to ensure that 1,200 disadvantaged people in Rome will have the opportunity to receive the coronavirus vaccine. It would be the same vaccine that Pope Francis and Holy See employees have been given. The shots will be given inside the Paul VI Hall at the Vatican. Aloysius John, Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis, joins us now from Rome. Welcome back. So great to see you. What can you tell us about the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines for the poorest and the most disadvantaged people in Rome?
COVID-19 has been a pandemic which is something new, and it is not like any other pandemic. So in this context today, everybody is concerned. And today, if you really want to get out of this pandemic, the vaccines, if they are going to be something crucial, then it has to be given. It has to be given to everybody. So what Caritas has done is Caritas has taken up the cause of this most vulnerable and has said today, if you really want to get out of this pandemic, we have to be in solidarity. And this is what we are trying to do today through the COVID-19 Commission and also through the COVID-19 activities.
I want to switch gears just a little bit. I know today at his weekly talk, Pope Francis said that he's praying for flood and landslide victims in Indonesia and East Timor. Can you give us an update on the situation there?
What is important today is Caritas Indonesia in the coming days is going to send us a request to bring support to the people. So the way we work in this kind of situation is to first of all give people the basic needs, food and shelter, and this is what Caritas is doing now. For the about 500 people have been given food and shelter in the Kupang Archdiocese, for example, and in Timor-Leste they're also doing the same thing in Flores and other places. They're also taking care of the people who have been affected by the cyclone. So once people are taken care of, the next step would be to see how they could get back to normal life, how they could be made resilient in this context of situation, in this context where they are in highly vulnerable situation. So there will be lots of need for the church to come to the help, Caritas to come to the help by giving them, again, food and water and other basic necessities, and also eventually helping them to build their houses. So this is how Caritas will be progressing now. So as of today, they're looking at taking care of the people in order to bring them to a safe situation, give them safety, and also give them the basic needs.
And also lastly, Pope Francis announced his prayer intention for April earlier today. What is he praying for this month?
Pope Francis is praying for the most vulnerable, the refugees and those who are fleeing the war, people who are leaving their countries, leaving their homelands, desperately in search of a new heaven. So the prayer today is how these people could find their dignity, how they could live in dignity, how their fundamental rights to live as human beings could be respected. I think this is a key element of prayer which Pope Francis is asking us to pray, because today most of them leaving their homes and their near and dear ones, they are living psychological tensions, psychological problems. So the question for us is how do we join hands with them in prayer, in solidarity, so that they are able to find a better future, a better life, and above all, a life in dignity. And this is what Pope Francis is calling us to pray today.
Aloysius John, Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, immigration issues, how the Biden administration is responding to the border crisis. As we reported yesterday, 2 men from Yemen who are on the FBI's terror watch list were arrested at the U.S.-Mexico border this year. One was arrested in January, the other one late last month. Both are being held in federal custody. Joining us now is Alfonso Aguilar, president of the Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles. Alfonso, welcome back. Great to see you. Most people we know, no doubt, come to the U.S. seeking a better life, but as we just mentioned, there are people like these 2 men from Yemen who probably didn't have the best intentions coming over here. How do we find a balance?
Well, it's difficult. And these are just 2 cases of people that we were able to detain. Possibly others have been able to go through the border and enter the country. Our enemies are looking at our vulnerabilities. And certainly right now, our border, they're seeing vulnerabilities at the border. And that's why we're seeing people like that trying to go through our southern border. I think you have to strengthen border security. What President Biden has done, I think it's irresponsible. I know we want to be welcoming to immigrants, but you can't do it by dismantling common sense policies at the border that ensure that our homeland is protected and dissuade migrants from coming irregularly to our southern border. You know, a lot of people in Central America are looking at the policies from the President Biden, and they're saying the border is open. He wants to receive us. And they're making this very dangerous trek, which a lot of people are victims of violence, theft. Women and girls are victims of sexual violence. There's studies that show that perhaps up to 60% of women and girls are victims of sexual violence. So we don't want to encourage that. And it used to be the policy of the United States that we would send a clear message to Mexico and Central America that nobody should try to enter illegally to the country or make that dangerous trek to the border. But we're seeing a major shift in immigration policy where we're basically signaling to people in the region, come, at some point we'll let you in.
Yeah, and another thing really concerning too, there's been a lot of talk about human trafficking. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's one of the biggest concerns. What we're seeing with this massive movements of people, it's easier for traffickers to move people around. And we see human trafficking of women for the sex trade, but we also see child trafficking. That's why, Cardinal Sarah, who understands the issue of migration, he's from Africa and knows what happens with migrants moving to North Africa to cross the Mediterranean to get to Italy, has called this massive migration that we're seeing in different areas of the world, he calls it a new form of slavery. And that's precisely what we see with human trafficking. It's happening in very large numbers, and this massive movements of people facilitate the trafficking of children and women. Either they enter illegally, sometimes they're actually even children are given to federal authorities, and federal authorities have to process these children very quickly, and often they turn them to adults who say they're relatives in the U.S., but it turns out that they're not relatives but traffickers. So this is very dangerous. That's why we want to have operational control as much as possible of our border.
Alfonso, I want to talk a little bit more about the children. We only have maybe less than a minute left, but I do want to get to this. Recently, we've seen some very concerning images of really young children literally being dropped over a border while we're being abandoned near the border and crying for help. What can be done about this?
Well, it's a tragedy, but this will continue. It's not going to get better if we do not strengthen securities at the border. We have to expand the construction of the wall system. It dissuades people from coming here. People are desperate in some countries in Central America. These are economic migrants. And if we continue to send the message that, you're welcome to come here, they're going to keep on coming. And the message from the administration is don't come now. And that's not a strong enough message for a lot of people in Central America, they read that as saying, at some point, we're going to let you in. So they're going to keep coming in because they're going to think, let's go right now so we can get in line until they finally can open the gates and let us in. It's a very dangerous situation, but the only answer right now is to step up border security.
Yeah, and hopefully we get this under control. Thank you so much, Alfonso. Alfonso Aguilar, president of the Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles. Up next, faith in politics, how one lawmaker was inspired by Mother Angelica. And the Holy Father's message, why Pope Francis promotes the intercession of saints. Pope Francis has appointed a new bishop of Duluth, Minnesota. Father Daniel Felton currently works in his home diocese of Green Bay. His appointment fills the vacancy left by the 2019 death of Bishop Paul Serba. The prior appointee resigned following an allegation of sexual abuse. Having faith in God is how Congressman Jake LaTurner says he lives his life. The sixth-generation Kansan says that it is a virtue he learned early on in life with the help of his grandmother, as well as EWTN's foundress, Mother Angelica. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more in tonight's Faith and Politics series.
This night was going to challenge you to be greater, to be more holy.
It was those lessons from Mother Angelica that still resonate in the mind and heart of Congressman Jake LaTurner.
It was on the entire time I was growing up. Yeah, my grandmother watched Mother Angelica every morning of her life and watches daily mass every day still.
Congressman Jake LaTurner says his grandparents, Joe and Ruby, made sure he stayed true to his Catholic faith. Ironically, he says they both grew up not knowing God.
My grandpa was in the Korean War, and while in Korea, lost sight in his left eye. As a result of that, he was shipped to a hospital, Army hospital in Texas.
While healing, his grandfather would help others around the hospital. One day, Joe helped a fellow soldier to Sunday Mass, which changed his life forever.
Fast forward, my grandmother and him get married. They'd been married for a couple of years, and as he put it, something was missing in our life. And it was that experience that led them to the Catholic Church.
A Catholic faith Congressman LaTurner now instills in his family, a faith that believes in protecting the unborn.
Life issues are what brought me into politics. I grew up standing on life chains. My family is very involved in helping candidates who are pro-life win. And I don't think there has been a time since Roe v. Wade where people should be more optimistic than right now.
He prays the U.S. Supreme Court will bring change if and when it is presented with a case involving abortion. Congressman LaTurner says he keeps his spiritual glass full with the help of daily prayer, and he says the only way his life as a congressman works here on Capitol Hill is with the help of his wife, who he calls a superhero, and as long as they keep Christ as the center of their lives. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
And finally tonight, Pope Francis reminds the faithful that we are never alone, even in our darkest moments.
La santità è un percorso di vita di incontro con Gesù.
At his weekly talk at the Vatican, the Holy Father says both Christ and the communion of saints surround us every time we pray. Pope Francis says the saints, both known and unknown, are our older brothers and sisters, and they intercede for us throughout our lives. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.